I'm here at Stokehouse Q in Brisbane with Eddie McDougall, the flying winemaker. Eddie McDougall is an award-winning winemaker, chairman of the Asian Wine Review, wine critic, columnist and TV personality behind the Flying Winemaker, one of Asia Pacific's most dynamic wine brands. Eddie studied in Australia and has extensive winemaking experience. He has his own wine brand, Eddie McDougall Wines, and is passionate about bringing good wine to everyone. Eddie, welcome to G&M.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Why the Flying Winemaker?
Well, I mean, it's the two words combined. Literally is a literal translation of what I do. I fly around a lot. I spend a lot of time on an aeroplane, but traveling to different vineyards around the world. And I'm a winemaker by trade. And I guess it kind of stuck because I was producing wines in both Italy, at one point even in Hong Kong, and now more recently Australia and New Zealand are the time, two countries that I spend more time in.
And what made you get into the wine business? How did you get in there?
Funnily enough, I was a student coming out of an international business degree in around 2003. I was working in a really great restaurant here in Brisbane, which sadly doesn't exist anymore.
Which one was that?
By the name of Isis Brasserie.
Okay.
And they had a fabulous wine list. And that said, I didn't know anything about wine. I was merely just a waiter and trying to earn some cash on the weekends and the odd nights during the week. And there was one night where there was a table of politicians. I think they must have come out of the office and were debriefing or something, and they'd ordered a bottle of wine. What happened that night was probably one of the toughest shifts you could ever have in a restaurant, where things just weren't working. I was putting plates down in the wrong places. The kitchen was bringing out food that was either not cooked to perfection or whatnot, and it was a challenging nightmare where customer service wasn't right up to scratch. So as you can imagine, tips were terrible, if any at all. And so at the end of the night, there was a half a bottle of wine left over by this table, who sort of kind of thought, Tuesday night we're out, we're done. And the owner of the restaurant said, look, we've got to finish this wine. And there's myself and one other waiter, and they poured the wine, and I didn't swirl or sniff. I just drank it like a drink, and the moment that wine hit my lips and got some flavour onto my tongue, it was this incredible epiphany moment. I just turned to the person next to me and said, holy hell, I've got to go learn how to make this. It's delicious. And it was a wine from France by a varietal by the name of Pinot Blanc, made by a producer called Paul Blanc, and it was from the Alsace region. So not a particularly expensive wine. A white wine that's got some nice texture to it, but nothing like I'd ever tried before, and neither did I thought wine could taste like that. So that moment, being such a moment of clarity, forced my hand to graduate from that business degree, enroll on a postgraduate wine science degree at the University of Melbourne. I moved to Victoria, got myself a job at a winery called Shadowfax Winery, and I guess the rest is history. I kind of just followed the nose and the tongue and decided that winemaking was a career path that I wanted to pursue, and haven't looked back since.
So you obviously love it. It's a passion.
Yeah, and a lot of people say, what do you do for work? And I say, look, I don't go to work. I get up and do what I enjoy doing, and it's never been a struggle to get out there and do it. There's various elements to winemaking. It's not just stomping grapes and making great delicious wines, but it's out there talking about it, educating people about wine in general, not just your own brands, and kind of championing the category itself as something that works wonderfully well with food. And I guess a big part of my job is to make it accessible to more people.
Okay. So how would you describe your philosophy on food and wine?
Look, there's many philosophies on food and wine, and mine's fairly simple in respect that there's obviously the traditional ones where people say, look, white wine, white meat, or fish, and red wine, red meat, or beef, or whatever it might be. It works if those particular proteins or the type of fish has no sauce, no seasoning, nothing, as a very simple combination. Yeah, sure, that works. But as you get to more complex flavors, and as I've learnt this when I traveled through India actually and tried to do wine pairing with Indian cuisine, you're actually not pairing the protein inside. Like if it's a chicken curry, you're not pairing with the chicken. You're actually pairing with the gravy or the spices or the complexity of flavors that are cooked through the onions and the garlic and all those kind of things. So, it doesn't mean white wine works with that, and that doesn't mean you only can drink beer with curry. There are some very nice red wines, with, for example, lower tannins, may have slightly higher alcohol percentages, more intense fruitiness that combines very well with these flavors. And then on the flip side, you can have something more clean and crisp, like Vietnamese food, for example, where it's a lot of lime juice, a lot of raw vegetables, but may have prawns, and then there's always a dipping sauce of sorts, which the dipping sauce is often fish sauce.
Right.
Very strong flavored, very pungent, and so it doesn't necessarily mean that just white wine works well with that because it's clean and crisp, right? So you could probably steer yourself to a rosé, which has a bit more body and perhaps sometimes a little bit of sweetness as well.
Okay. So you're prepared to look at variations. What's your take on terroir and the sense of place for both food and wine?
Well, I think terroir is paramount for a lot of things when it comes to wine specifically. When it comes to food, I think of cheeses and certainly when you think about where the cows have been bred and the type of milk that comes from those cows and where whether they're fed at altitude or milked at altitude at certain times of the year, that all influences the flavour of that end product. And the same goes for grapes, for wine production. We have a vineyard in New Zealand growing great Pinot Noir, and we know that specifically our particular plots are so unique to where we are and so unique to the country and the rest of the world that our Pinots are not replicable.
Right. Okay.
So that's the key thing. You are so defined by what is off that patch of soil, what is created by that environment around you, and seasonality obviously is one of those things you can never control.
But you can still match that with foods from other parts of the world?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And look, I think the beauty of food and wine pairing, the experimentation is a must. Not everything is always going to work, and you've got to kind of put the notion that every combo is perfect, but I think every combo should be a learning experience to push you to that perfect experience.
You, I believe, you're passionate about rosés as well, and rosé hasn't always had a great name. Tell us a little bit about rosé and how you use that.
Look, rosé's gone through various phases, from being ultra popular in the 70s, and some people may know the brand Mateus, the Portuguese brand.
Yep.
Beautiful bottle, often end up being a candle holder more than anything else. Cheap, delicious, and the likes of Jimi Hendrix was slugging it back.
Yep.
And then it stopped. All of a sudden, in the 80s, 90s, rosé just disappeared off the face of the earth.
Right.
Did it get a bad rap? Not necessarily. I think people just got over the taste profile. And back then, rosés were always made in a slightly off-dry format.
Yep.
And people started drinking wine not just as a drink. People started drinking wine with food. So something that's slightly sweeter didn't always go well with food. So people then moved to white wines and then other categories of reds and things like that, dry flavours and oakier or whatever it might be. Fast forward to now, in the last sort of 5 to 8 years, and even more recently, wine styles in the rosé making, they're drier. They're not single varietals anymore. They're made of blends, and the top ones are often made with 4 or 5 different varietals. And we produce a couple from Margaret River, and they're never single varietal ones because we take our rosé seriously. Our vineyards are purpose-picked vineyards for producing rosé, so you need grapes that can ripen but be picked early, so that you retain freshness and crispness but still have flavour. And then when you blend them, you're almost building out what some of the great Bordeaux blends are like. They add structure, they add texture, they add aromatic complexity, they add freshness and vibrancy through acidity, and almost like a chef in the kitchen, having 5 different ingredients is to create one balanced package on the dish.
Right.
We treat rosé the same. It's not an afterthought, and the consumer now is feeling the same way, and they're starting to see rosés creep up in price point. They're starting to see rosés not just produced in the southern part of France or Europe. Great Australian rosés, great New Zealand rosés. There are some great examples from America. So that is also affected by demand as well. So it's not just winemakers making better rosé, it's that consumers are drinking better, drinking more, and have I guess the appetite for it now.
And you have your own rosé in the McDougall.
Yes, we
brand?
produce two from Margaret River. So
Right.
one is called Little Pig Rosé,
Right.
which is a cheeky sort of wine brand that we, reintroduced back into the market in 2019. That particular brand was called Little Pig because my grandmother from my Chinese side of family used to call me Little Pig because I was born in the year of the pig.
Right.
That's
lucky though, isn't it?
It's lucky. But sadly in 2012 she passed away, so I discontinued the brand for about 7 years and then brought it back in 2019 because this 2019 is also the year of the pig.
Right.
So I thought it was the right time to do it, and we brought back the wine in a different blend. We're using Sangiovese, Shiraz, and a little bit of Merlot, whereas in the past it was single varietal. And it's fun. It's really uplifting. It's an energetic drink. We produced another one which is slightly more serious, made from Tempranillo, Nebbiolo, Syrah, and Vermentino.
Right.
And this is the one that we put in the big wine shows, and that wins all the awards, and gets the high ratings. Turns the critics' heads, and it gives, I'd like to say that, we're very proud to say that we give the top French ones a real run for their money, and have shown trumps in great wine shows in London and so forth.
And this is obviously an obvious question, but what's your favourite drink after a hard day?
I have a number. It depends on how hard the day is. If the day's been really, 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 really hard, then probably a very strong Negroni.
After my own heart.
If the day's been, mild, maybe a 6 or 7 out of 10, then a nice crispy glass of wine. But if I've just generally had a good day, and it's been easy to get through work-wise, and the kids aren't screaming the house down, then obviously an icy cold beer. Anything that's clean and crisp, that I can consume quickly is good.
That's great. Thanks, Eddie. And I know you're on a flying visit as it is, but thank you for giving us some time.
No, pleasure, and great to be part of G&N.
Thank you.
Thank you.